Hi, I'm Beat Nussbaumer from macrobeat.co.uk. For once we had a rather busy week in foreign exchange and the markets across the board, which is a sort of new thing given the last few weeks of rather very dull markets. We have a dollar that suddenly started to surprise the market, which is something we're going to look into it later on. At the same time, we had a lot of data from various countries around the world which has started to fuel the dollar rally that we currently see. So I would like to show you the sort of first slide, which is the German IFO. What we see here, and the reason I put that in, is really for the fact that after the very disappointing PMI data from the week before that continues to show a rather bleak picture for the Eurozone, there was some hope that the German IFO, that some economists think is the more appropriate indicator to watch rather than the PMIs, to give us a slightly different signal. That hasn't really been the case. As you see, the sort of slight improvement that we had in the previous months is just suddenly another downturn, and there is really more and more doubts whether or not the German economy is really able to recover in the second half of 2019. On the next slide, we would see the euro dollar and the impact we had since last week's weak PMI and the weaker IFO data this week. We have finally broken that big 111.85 Fibonacci area that sort of held for a long time, and we are at the beginning of what looks like another push higher in the dollar. To take a closer look, we look at the next slide, the dollar index, which is has broken as well the 2018-2019 highs, has broken the sort of Fibonacci area, and the only thing that's keeping it back right now is the backside of that upward channel that we see. I call this really the dollar melt-up. I think the move as such is coming to a surprise to the market. There is a lot of chatter out there as well about dollar shortages in various economies, in particular in some of the emerging markets. But the whole story is really a double whammy. We don't only see the US economy still holding in firm. If you look at the next slide, where we see the Aussie dollar, we had a very weak Australian CPI that suddenly puts rate cuts from the RBA back on the radar. Some economists even call for 2 hikes, in the first in June, maybe the second already in further, in summer. That has put a lot of pressure on the Aussie, and we're now back to the sort of pre-flash crash lows. And as well here is obviously the double whammy between a weak perception on the Aussie and the RBA versus a strong dollar. So these moves start really taking place, and it starts to look as if the dollar is really able to gonna be pushing higher. On the next slide, we have dollar Canada. We had Bank of Canada this week. I did expect them to blink. They did finally blink and start to be a little bit more cautious on the rate paths going forward. Next to that, we had a sharp GDP downward revision from 1.7 to 1.2%. So we see the global data is still a problem, while the US still kind of hanging in there. What we see here as well is a sharp move high in dollar Canada, just fueling this entire dollar story. Last but not least, I want to show you a dollar emerging markets, which is dollar Korea. You see an extremely sharp bounce. Again, here it's a double whammy between general dollar strength and a shocking negative GDP data out of Korea. The reason why this is important, the Korean economy has always been the sort of perfect child we see out there, and in that sense it continues to be a rather concern for the global growth story. As I said, this is going on. I could show you various charts in the dollar emerging markets world, and in that sense that the picture is the same across the board, where we see what, as I said earlier, a melt-up in the dollar. This is a surprise to the market. I think the market did expect the dollar to sort of stay somewhat flat to lower, given the change from the Federal Reserve to move to neutral, at the same time as some people even expect the Fed to cut rates towards the end of the year. So this dollar story, I feel, could just be the start of a rather stronger dollar move. I don't think it's going to be a fast move, it's be a grinding move, but be aware, I think the dollar is going to strengthen further. This is it from me, Beat Nussbaumer from macrobeat.co.uk. Thank you.